In this video, we are going to do an Octo Manager, a Squid game tutorial. So we're going to have a game manager for that, and then we're also going to have a tug of war game that you can put on and play. And so, yeah, this is going to be an amazing tutorial. So let's continue with the video. So before going to the code, I want to show you how you would set this Squid game devices because there's a couple of crucial things to make the system work. So here with the first part of this Squid game tutorial series, we are doing the game manager module, so the round manager, and the one of the mini games is the tug of war. And in the subsequent videos, we are going to add more mini games, and we are going to keep the game manager, and we are going to add more mini games. But for now, in this video, we have the game manager, the round manager, or in other words, round manager, and the one mini game, which is the tug of war. So for the game manager to work, we need to do two important settings, which is in island settings, because we are not using the Fortnite round system, and we are doing our own custom round system. So there are a couple of things you need to do. So for one of them is you need to set the join in progress to spawn, and the other is you need to set the only allow respawn if spawn pads available to true. And that's actually all that you need to do, and then the rest will be handled by the game manager. And when it comes to the tug of war minigame, we have a bunch of things to set, but one of the crucial things is that we have a rope prop, and we have player references for each team. Of course, you need to set enough amount of player references for both teams. Like if you have a max players of 16 for your island, you need at least 8 on both sides, because the game is going to split the teams to two equal sized teams. But depending on the total amount of players, it could be like one side could be one greater, but bottom line is that you need to have enough player references. And for this one, I have just placeholder props. I mean, we have the props, but the meshes are placeholders. So in reality, you would have a rope mesh that is centered at the center of these floors, and that it's a mesh that's something it's a a rope mesh that would probably go from this point to this point. And a crucial thing you need to do is that you need to set these player references as a child to the rope prop. So you just take the player reference and just drag it along like this to make it a child. And then we have the red team side prop and blue team side prop. These are actually called the rope side props. So basically, you need to set these props where the rope ends, right? So we know the distance from each side to the center of the rope. And then we have two props which denote the fall off position of the floors for each floor for each team. And those were the specific things for that game. Then we have more general stuff, that play spawners. Then we have teleporters for the lobby, and we have teleporters for the mini game, right? And if you go to the devices, you can see that we have two HUD messengers for displaying information for the player. And you can have a victory sequence when all the mini games end, but we are not going to. That's optional. You might not set it. You also need to set the total duration of that, so device waits for it to end. You can say and you can set the countdown seconds before the game starts, min players to start, and then victory XP. This is when all the games end. So for the because the XP is relevant because we are storing it persistently, so you can do stuff with it in the future. And then you set the references of all the mini games that you have, and each mini game has its own device. In this case, we have one, but as I said, in future tutorials we'll add more mini games. We have the input trigger. This is it will make more sense when you see it, but we are going to have an input bar, and we are going to listen to this input, right? And in my case, I made that input as the jump input. So in the press string, that's why I'm setting press jump the ball. And maybe you set it to something else, some other input. If so, you will just adjust the string here correctly. And then we have a fixed point camera that looks at the play area. And again, you would just adjust the position and the angle of it as you'd like. And then we have a couple of audios. So we have a bar audio. This is basically plays throughout the tug of war game. You should, but for all of these, you should set them to play on instigator, and play location should be local player or instigator player. It's the same thing because they're played on the instigator. And this is the click audio, the audio that's going to play when you click it. And this is the input fail audio. This is when the input fails. You press the input, the player presses the input when the input stick is out of range, because we are going to have a input bar that's going to move. We are going to have an input bar with defined couple of different defined areas: green, yellow, orange, and red. And we have going to have an input stick that's going to move along that. And if the player presses on the red area, it's going to fail. Then we have the player references. So we also have another important thing here. We also we have these important things commented in the code as well. So you don't need to remember those from this video only. So for the player references, the order of the player references in the array should follow the order of the player references from first to back. So the first player reference here is the one at the front, and it then goes back, and the order follows in this array in the same way as well. And it's the same for the other team as well. And we have beacons. So for the beacons, you need to set badges, uses. You can set the visuals of it any way you want, but make sure the friendly team these are any, and team visibility is none. And then you could set this to whatever you want, but I just set it to your team. And make sure the distance is really high, so that we make sure that it's being showed. and make sure it doesn't require line of sight. And then we come to, the bars. So you can set ratios for these bars. Make sure they're all between 0 and 1, and the total of the maximum values here cannot exceed 1 as well. And if so, the code is going to give you an error right away, and it's not going to work. So here we have, sizes for those bars as set. You can change all that. And then we have the points to give when the stick hits those specific bar areas. You can adjust those as well. And then we have an info string showing at the top of the bar when you hit a bar area, and you can set the duration, the show duration for that. And then we have basically the speed for the input stick. So this means like it's going to cover the 1/3 of the input bar at each second. So you could, increase the speed of this. We would probably, for the sake of the tutorial, I made it a bit slow. We would probably want this a bit faster. And we have the game area teleporters, and then we have the UI. A lot of the things here are exposed to you, so you could customize the UI by just changing these editable values. If you want to customize it more, you could drop into the code, and it doesn't use any any textures or anything. It just uses color blocks. Again, we have a schematic, which is optional. So this is going to play at the start of the game if you set it, and then we can set the XP to give when the player wins the game. All right, and if you come to the game manager device, we have, I actually already showed you this. I forgot it a bit. So yeah, and that's actually about it when setting the devices, and let's just continue with the code. So this is the game manager. As you can see, we have the important nodes here, and we have the tug of war code here, and you can see we also have important nodes here. We also have like tooltip messages for a couple of editables, so if you hover over them, you will be able to see them. But let's first continue with the game manager. So you can see we are storing some persistent data for each player, which is just a level and XP. So this is the base class for that all the minigames use. We have the teleporters, the optional cinematic, and the XP reward. And we have some functions to initialize and start the game. And when we come to the game manager, it handles the custom round logic. So at the start, it subscribes to the events and stuff, right? And it shuffles all the minigames into an array. So it plays the minigames in a randomized way. And so it tries to start a game. And so first of all, it will wait. It will keep waiting if there is not enough players. So this will just keep waiting until there's enough players. And if there's enough players, it's going to start the game timer, which is in this example we're waiting for 10 seconds, but you can set it to whatever you want. And all these will be set on the UI using hood messengers. And we also do, again, after this wait duration ends, we again look for if there's enough players, because maybe in that 10 or whatever seconds, maybe players left and we don't have enough players now. So that's why we are doing that. And if so, we are going to just enter here back in. But if not, we're just going to start the game. So we first disable the player spawners, because remember that this island settings. So this basically means that joining players will go to the spectate instead of spawning, because we have disabled all the available player spawners for them to spawn. But we are going to enable them back up when all the games end, right? Because we don't want new players to join while all the games are continuing, when they are not finished, right? Because it's an elimination based sequence. So then we get the current minigame. We also have an updated players remaining. We have a players remaining text at the top right center. And we have an XP bar on the bottom left, by the way. You'll see those when we play test it. And so we update that text and we start the game, right? You can see that we just call this start game function. And I will go into the minigame in a minute or so. So then, when the minigame ends, it will call the on-game end function of this game manager, notifying it that, hey, the game is done, do whatever you do. So it will teleport the players back to the lobby, and then it will grant all the alive players the win XP for that game, right? And then it will try to increment the game index. But if there is if all the games have ended, basically it will restart the all the games again. So first, it will shuffle the games again, and it will give the victory XP reward for the alive players, and if there is any, it's going to play the victory sequence. And then it's going to enable all the players, and we are waiting. It's going to enable all the player spawners to spawn the players, and it's going to wait a bit to make sure they're all enabled and such. And then it's going to spawn all the dead players, making them available to join the next sequence of games. And then it's going to call this function again, right? And it's loop and the sequence continues like that. And by the way, if there is a current game, another game, then it will just it's not going to reset anything. Just with the alive players, it's going to start a new game, right? Yeah. And this is the function to update the UI text. This is a utility function to get the amount of alive players. And this is the XP function to grant players the experience and update the UI. Then we have another utility function to teleport the players into a shuffled teleporters. We have again some conversion functions for our datas. We have a simple function to calculate the max experience for a level. We are not even using an exponential. We just multiply it by 5. You can customize it to whatever you want. Then the UI update function, we just update the level bar, the experience bar, and then we have the screen canvas creation, right? We have the level bar and the player's remaining text. Player's remaining text is just a text block, but the level bar is another sub canvas, which we have a level text, and we have another sub canvas for the bar. And for the bar, we have a background bar, a foreground bar, and an experience text on top of it. And you can, customize all that by actually just updating the variables here. We have a black background bar with a semi-opaque background bar with a purple foreground bar. And then we have the tug of war minigame, which have all the stuff that I have showed you. So first at initialization, oh, by the way, yeah, the game manager initializes all the mini games here. So it listens to the events of the input trigger, and it records the starting locations of the player references and the rope, which we're going to use when simulating this game. And by listening to the pressed and released events, we are basically just detecting the click. So if we were to just listen to the pressed, we would like get that event while the player is pressing it, like keep pressing the input, but we don't want that. So we are just looking at the click state. So that's why we also have a like agent data for this minigame as well. So that's where we keep the state, that input state here, and we also keep the UI state here as well. And in the start game, we disable all the play references. We teleport the rope to the start position because it might have changed the location. And remember, all the play references are childhood, our children to the rope prop. So we just move the rope prop, and the play references will follow them. So we switch to custom camera for all the players. So this is not actually that. So this is actually where we do it. And we also register them to the input trigger. We basically initialize their state for this game. We hide the players and we put them in stasis so that they can move. And basically we register them to the play references down here so that we're going to see the unmoving player references in the game. And we are splitting them to two teams randomly, a red team and a blue team. And then we spawn the async game tick, which is the simulation logic for this minigame. And this game might end at any condition when there's not enough players. And if so, by the way, if there's not enough players, or if the game has ended, or if the somehow the session has ended, we're breaking it. So first we are checking for the input, like if there's any click. If you're like looking at which range is that, is it the green one, is it yellow, orange, or red? If so, we update the game state accordingly. And then basically we move the stick on the UI, right? And basically this is like a boomerang animation, so it's like or ping pong. So it moves to the right, and then when it hits the end of the bar, it moves to the left. And this is a general check that looks if someone hit the input and it changed the progress. It should basically change the location of the rope. If so, if that state has changed, we are going to update the rope progress bar UI. So we have two bar UIs, one for the input, and it's different for each player. And then we have one bar at the top that shows the progress of the rope, which can be set, which showed to all the players. The same one is showed to all the players, but the input bar is also shown to all the players, but it's per player, so each player has their own input bar, each different input bar. So we update the UI for that progress bar, and we also move the play references. So we actually do that by just moving the rope, because the play references are children of the rope, so they will follow along. We also might update the info string visibility if there's a press made by the player. And when we exit the loop, it means the game has ended, so we stop the audio. We stop the kind of the ambient audio that was playing, and then we made the losing side fall. So how we do that, we disable the player references, and we first move the play references by moving the rope prop. So when they reach the edge, so that's why we had the edge prop. When each play references reaches the edge, we are disabling that play reference, and then we are teleporting the player at the air near the edge, and they fall, and you get this like sequence of the rope moving to the side, to the winner team side, as if they are pulling the rope, and the player references following them, and at the edge, one by one, players just fall off to the below. And I didn't put it in this version, but I'm assuming you would have a damage volume at the bottom of that area, so that falling players die. And that's what we do here. This was a bit tricky, so we have some debug prints for you to also better understand the situation. But you could remove those if you want, and they are not going to be visible in your published game, of course. They are just for debugging. And then after that fall sequence, we reset the other stuff, like we remove the camera, we reset the input, and then we release all the live players from the stasis, all the players in this case, actually, to make sure even the dead ones are released. And then we are making the beacons invisible, basically, by removing all players from that. And then we we go back to the game manager saying, hey, the game has ended. So yeah, and so this is where we update the input bar, result text. So we have actually a lot of somewhat overwhelming UI code here. So this is where we update all the input bars. So we have like four of them basically, but we don't. Red one stays the same, so we update 3 of the 4. Then we create general canvas. We have the rope bar at the top, input bar at the bottom. So, and to create the movement for those input sticks, we are using invisible horizontal color boxes with a stack box. So we basically set the sizes of the color blocks, and that makes the other color block, which is the input stick, move. So this is similar to the trick we used with the UI drop, like a drop item UI tutorial. And then we create the rope canvas. So it's just the stick and the red colored piece. Then we have on both sides we have colored pieces to show the sides of the teams. We have the red team at the left side, and we have the blue team at the right side. Then here we have the create input bar canvas. We again have an inner canvas for that as well, and for the text we just put them at the below and the top of the inner canvas, which inner canvas is just the the bars, the color blocks, and the input stick. And that's all for the code. It's probably one of the most complex ones we have written so far, because we not have one script but 2 scripts for this one, because one of them is the game manager and one of them is the one specific minigame, and we have a good like base layout here for you to be able to add more minigames using the base class. So let me scroll up so you could see all of that. Maybe I'm just going to scroll slowly because it's a lot of code. Probably not just most complex, but also the longest code, if you add both scripts together. Actually, the game sequence with Game Manager is not that complex, but when you're doing this kind of custom round managing, it could be a confusing at first. But this is, I would say this is a bit more straightforward than maybe some other kind of custom rounds. Because, and the major reason of that is we are not actually spawning players at the middle of the round sequence, and we are only spawning them when all the games end. All right, now we have, of course, a bunch of editables here for the UI. And then, yeah, we come to agent data for this one, and it ends. Okay. And let me show you the game manager as well. It's a bit less code in this one. All right. Yeah. The editables again, the base class for the minigames, and then it ends. All right, that was all. And now we are going to go to we're going to playtest it with a bunch of my friends, and you'll see how it plays out. All right, now we are. I have two of my pals here, and now we are going to test the game. So just right off the bat, it's going to start the counter because we are, there's enough people to start the game, and then it will teleport us to the game area, so you can see the player references. So now I am going to make them fall, or maybe they will be able to make me fall. Of course, here most of the props are just empty props, but you can. So actually, they made me fall, and so yeah, that's it was pretty smooth. All these empty sphere props, you can just replace them with your own props and stuff, right? And ideally, what you want is to replace that middle sphere prop with a rope prop that goes from the middle to both ends of the floor. And of course, depending on your game, depending on how many people you have, you can adjust the distances. You can adjust the the position and the angle of the camera and all that good stuff. And so that was all. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. And if you want to access the code, and we don't have any assets for this one, but we will share the entire, actually the content folder of this project, so you won't need to set it up. You can just use the content asset, basically the map asset that we will give, and you can just use that to start off your own project in UEFN. So if you want to get those or the code, you can go to our Patreon. So thanks for watching in, and see you in other videos.